When a bunch of us were talking about Vulcan closing, one of the things we talked about was what our favorite shifts were, which includes the people they were with. My two favorites were definitely Sunday daytime with Riley Carbuto. I think it's Carbuto and not Carbuto. Um, we like blasted good records, and Sunday morning is when all the returns come in, so we would just like listen to the only ones or put on a Flying on video compilation and just like hardcore like blast through all the returns. Of course, I would be remiss talking about Vulcan returns if I didn't bring up the porn returns, but also the returns from people who rented porn and something else. Inevitably, you'd be cleaning suspicious substances off of those DVDs. Some, I think, not of human origin because they were mysteriously unwipeable. Things that just stay moist over long periods for obvious reasons. So, yeah, there were often mysterious substances either on the porn or the porn adjacent titles. Sometimes I would recognize, there were certain customers who, say, favored pornography and World War II movies, and the World War II movies would also be impacted for obvious reasons. We did have some people with some really specific preferences. There was a guy who I never actually helped him. People kind of briefed me on him beforehand. It didn't come up. But it was a guy who he needed subtitles in a specific language. I forget which one. Not one of the standard ones you'd expect. And boobs. So like certain language subtitles, boobs, anything with that combination, he was good. But it wasn't always easy to find apparently. There was also a guy, he wore heavy metal t-shirts exclusively, who only wanted to watch horror movies, but he didn't want them to have too many women in them. Which, if you've done any scholarship or much watching of horror movies, it's like a staple of the genre, like Women in Peril, come on. This guy actually referred to The Descent as a chick flick. The first time he asked me for help, he didn't really want to be talking to me. I don't think he liked interacting with women that much either. I told him that the most knowledgeable person in the store when it came to horror movies was Kristen Ellisor, and he seemed skeptical. But I remember she did such a good job finding him quality horror movies with, they're bound to have some women, but a lower woman quotient, that he started coming back and asking for her after a while. So she really won that guy over, and that was not an easy thing to do. Some of my favorite customers were actually dogs. Vulcan South, where I worked on Elizabeth, always had dog treats, free, unlimited. Some dogs weren't allowed to have our treats because of their, delicate constitutions or whatever. But let's see, some of my favorite dogs were Bob Hoffnar's dog, Lucy. So charming. Rocky, the Great Dane, who sadly passed away while I was still at Vulcan, and we had a little photo collage of him. He loved tiny dogs and was very gentle with them. He would literally tiptoe around smaller dogs to try to interact with them. I wish I could remember the name. There was a dog that had a spiral dyed into their fur, who used to run right up to the treats behind the counter and had no boundaries, but in a great way that I appreciated. There was a little dog, I wish I could remember his name. He was adorable. He would say happy birthday. It didn't have to be your birthday, but he would tell you happy birthday. Not really, but like or whatever. And he would always get treats, except sometimes his owner would say, oh, he can't have treats today, he already had Popeyes. I don't know, I just really loved that. Let's see. So, the codename thing. One of my other favorites was a customer whose codename in the point of sales system was Lady Gremlin. I know that sounds like an insult. She really looks like a lady gremlin. That doesn't mean she's not a nice looking lady. She was a petite, gremlinish woman. And she was a complete doll. Lovely to work with. Great taste in movies. And so we loved her, but she was Lady Gremlin. Speaking of taste in movies, when you're a video store clerk, people are always trying to impress you. Not everybody, obviously, but there's always that group of people who are trying to impress you with their picks. I just wanted to say I don't think I was ever impressed by anyone who was trying to impress me. And I was impressed by people who weren't. I know that's kind of trite, but it's true. The people who wanted to look cool were always bringing up things and being like, "Have you heard of a little director I call Wes Anderson?" Like, yes, I've heard of Wes Anderson. Congratulations. Like, come on. Let's see. I other favorites. We saw a lot of Kathy McCarty from Glass Eye and her husband. I never talked about her band with her. I was too embarrassed. But her husband David Thornberry. So yeah, Kathy McCarty and David Thornberry were favorites of mine. She would bring amazing cookies at Christmas. Like, I tried to get the recipe for one once, but we just never quite made that happen. But really, like 5 different kinds of amazing Christmas cookies. They were always super sweet, friendly, interesting picks, and also their dog was absolutely my number one Vulcan dog of all time. Well, they had 2 dogs. I don't mean to downplay the other dog, but they had this lovely old dog. I think he might have been some kind of chow mix named Traveler, who was just the sweetest guy. Just made my day to see him. Let's see. In addition to those nicknames, the point of sales had a lot of really interesting comments about people. My favorite was this one guy who his comment said that he smelled like vitamins, and that's not a description I would ever think of, but he did. He smelled like he worked in a vitamin cottage or something, or like he rolled himself in a big pile of emergency. But he was a lovely person. He was extremely shy. It's funny, he looked almost like a male model. Like, he was extremely handsome and like incredibly introverted, and I'd never seen quite such a strong combination of that in my life. And he also smelled very strongly of vitamins, or like that vitamin smell when you open up the Flintstones vitamins when you're a kid. I don't know what's up with that. I was talking about my favorite shifts. So I loved being on Sunday day shifts with Riley. We just synced up. That was awesome. But also I had a Friday shift for a long time with Kristen, starting when she was an assistant manager and she was showing me the ropes, and all the way until she was the manager. She kept that shift. Some other great people were on shift with us, like Jenny Carr and Tommy Swenson at different times. That reminds me of the time we felt like we had to make sure it wasn't pronounced Svensson. I think because there's an actor Kristen likes that's like Swenson pronounced Svensson. Anyway, working with Kristen on those shifts was amazing. That was one of those shifts where we'd have a bottle of wine under the counter, inevitably like brought in by a nice regular of ours, and we'd end up sitting on lawn chairs in the parking lot after closing, just hanging out, drinking or not, no pressure to do it. And we'd stay up until almost dawn, nearly, I don't know, at least half of the time. And other folks from the store or other friends of the store would come by and chat, and it was just a really, really special time. It reminds me of another thing. So before, I think it was before I was even on staff, maybe early after I got hired, it was one of the Twilight movies that came out, and I think it was Kristen's idea. We had a party in the parking lot to celebrate. It's not the one with the weird animatronic baby. It's like the one before that where Robert Pattinson's like in Rome or something. I mean, you can tell I didn't pay any attention to the movie, but we had a quote-unquote release party for it, and somebody had the idea to say that part of this celebration was we were going to burn, I don't know, symbolically burn things from our past or something like that. At this point, I was probably around 5 years out of an abusive relationship that lasted quite a while. And here, I'm gonna pause this. Hold on.